Welcome to BioInsights, where we explore the cutting edge of biotechnology, neuroscience, and human performance. I'm your host, Marcelo, and today the guest that brings a truly unique perspective to the intersection of neuroscience and technology. She's a world-ranked professional in racquetball athletics, who became a neuroscientist, and now she's revolutionized how we learn movement through wearable technology. Dr. Joe is the founder and CEO of PantherTech and the inventor of kinesthetic awareness training systems. It's a patented wearable that teaches us movement through real-time haptic feedback. Her work spans professional sports, clinical rehab, and industrial safety, all grounded in over a decade of applied neuroscience research. Dr. Joe, welcome to BioInsights. Uh,
Marcelo, thank you
yeah,
so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
uh, I I've really enjoyed how following and seeing what you're doing, and I know we got introduced through other individuals, but it's always really cool to find professionals that have like-minded applications. So thank
Right.
you.
Oh, I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
I live
So
for this.
yeah. So you were ranked sixth in the world in professional racquetball. So while you were pursuing research in neuroscience, um, how did that really help in creating where you are today? I mean, it's dual paths, right? As a professional athlete, you're really trying to seek exactly what you're trying to do in that space.
Hmm.
So what are some things that you're looking at when you're thinking about, hey, this is something that I think I could help?
Right, right. So the story is in racquetball. It's not like tennis or some other high-paying sport. So everyone who makes a living at racquetball does other things. I was lucky; I got to coach and run camps and clinics and whatnot. But the issue was I started late. I started at 17 years old. I'd never done racket sports before. So I had to quickly learn and teach myself how to stop being an athlete that played racquetball to be a racquetball skilled athlete. And so I fell in love with motor learning. The reason for the cat is that I wish there was a way to save the sensation of optimal movement or the position or the things that lead you there. And you've taken obviously in sport instruction and you get it right in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the lesson and then you spend the rest 50 minutes trying to chase that sensation, right? So I wish there was a way to save that sensation of movement. Um, and that's where the cat came in, and long road to get here, but essentially it's mixed between a motion capture sensor and a shock collar, but no shock, of course.
It's just a vibration
It's just thank you,
for our
yeah, oh,
listeners.
yeah, right, right. But it's like a little coach on the shoulder, right? If you're in range, out of range, it's based on both traditional learning dynamics, like explicit, I want you to do this exact motor pattern, and then also ecological dynamics, which is more of a constraints led, like let the skill emerge, manipulate the variables around the athlete, and let them figure out the best movement solution. I don't know if that was your question. I got stuck in the weeds already because that's what I do.
Well, it's true. It's really teaching sensation, right? So you're actively teaching sensation, a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've had this discussion before on a couple of calls talking about the protocols and the modules in your app
Mm-hmm.
about the sensation. Like, because I had that aha moment when, I'm looking at cueing and teaching movement from a coaching side or a personal training side. And it's like, how many times do I teach, like when teaching a proper squat or teaching a lunge or teaching a movement in the core about moving your hips back or,
Mm-hmm.
like people think that they are, and it's like, well, no, 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 let's do that. And sometimes a video helps or a picture helps,
Right,
but
right.
they need to see it to then, but they still need to feel it. And that sensation is really the cool thing,
That's
that
it. That's it.
that basically made you create like these. I mean, like you were a professional athlete again, ranked six, which is
Mm-hmm.
in the world, which a lot of people need to understand. It's like if you ever played racquetball, and I have, and I've played also tennis, and I've played other sports, to be ranked that high and think about, creating a patent or creating technology, like what were the key innovations you had in developing to like make this all work? Like what like you were like obviously you thought about if I'm going to do this, I'm going to think of protecting this as well.
Oh, right, right, right. Well, okay, so here's something else. I think I was in the third grade, believe it or not, and I took a piece of paper and I rolled it up like this, and I threw it in the trash can, and it went in. I'm like, okay, that's cool, and I tried to do it again. And no lie, this is probably the origin of where we are today, is that, some would go in and some wouldn't, and I couldn't figure out why. What was I doing different than one went in and one didn't? And that planted the seed. And then afterwards, after I had my pro career and got my master's in sports science, my doctorate in neuroscience, motor learning, I fell in love with motor learning. How you can be in one spot not having a motor pattern for this, or not being able to make your body do this, and then after a certain amount of, let's call it reps, but I have a big theory about that. A certain amount of time and actions, now suddenly you know how to do it. That's like magic to me, right? It's like magic. So I've wanted a way to save that sensation. And actually, I filed for the first patent, the first non-provisional patent, the day before I got married to my wife. And we had zero money in the bank. I'm like, honey, should I do this? And she said, yeah, you should do it. So I got the credit card out and put, the $3,000 deposit to put the first application for the patent, and now we've got two and one pending. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's not rocket science. It's just so obvious. It's like, oh, I verbal cues don't work very well because there's an extra layer of translation, right? So if you're teaching how to squat or whatever, you may say drop or push or pull or squeeze or pretend or grab the floor with your toes. All those verbal cues that needs translating through the language processors down to the motor commands to say, well, what does that mean? And it means something different from me than it does to Susie or Bobby or whomever else. And all you have as a coach is that one kid right in front of you that needs to feel this sensation, right? And that's where, because the vibrations go through the same neural pathway as your other mechanoreceptors, it's a much more natural way of motor learning than looking at a picture, for example. And that's not bad, right? But the visual system is so dominant that it kind of overtakes the other, and you rely on it more than not.
yeah. Well, the
You don't
human
need.
body is built that way, right? We're so visual dominant, unless, and we could see this when we look at a population that's blind.
Mm-hmm.
And it means the same underlying adaptation of vibration that they feel.
Uh-huh.
And, it's across a bunch of of different domains, like
Mm-hmm.
athletes, like you talked about, to industrial athletes, to rehabilitation patients. And, those are different use cases, but it comes down to the neurological system, right? So it's that
Right.
system that you talked about, mechanoreceptors is the word
Mm-hmm.
that you talked about. And that's for me is just really cool to see where you were and the decisions that you made and now where you are currently and how you're applying it. So like the one thing that I thought was really cool that you talked about in looking at everything that I was preparing for, and I would love to that reframing of like let's just use one of the examples. I know you talked about athletes and patients, but like in an industrial environment, I would love for you
Mm-hmm.
to say like how does a warehouse worker need the same attention to to a professional athlete from a
Mm.
biomechanics standpoint? How does that work? I mean, because I think
Yeah.
that I think people would understand that that's general movement, But
Yeah,
let's talk about that a little and how that works.
that makes sense. That makes sense. So I'll back up a step too. In addition to, aside from hitting a racquetball or throwing a football or, crossing a hurdle, jumping a hurdle, those are all things that a lot of people do, but a lot more people do things that are repetitive, hard on the body in warehouses and welders and shipbuilders and those type of people. So affectionately, we call them industrial athletes, as you know, because I mean, frankly, they might be training harder than some of the pro athletes out there, right? I mean, it's their job every day, right? When I trained, I think I maxed out at maybe 6, 7 hours a day. But not all of it was physical. We had some mental, some visualization stuff in there. So, I mean, they're really a different breed to go out and sling a hammer all day, right? So, the body is naturally, uh, tends to do let's see, how can I put it? It wants to take the easiest path, right? Even though that might not be the most ergonomic path. So one of the examples is we had the cat on a guy that had to lift tires all day, right? And he would lean over at the waist, and of course, physics and ergonomics say that especially leaning over and twisting is no good. If you do it once, twice, five, that's fine, but do it for 3 years straight, 28 times an hour or whatever it might be. That's just a recipe for repetitive injury. So by using the laws of physics and gravity, squatting down and putting the load on your legs and not your back is the way to lift. Now, I'm not an ergonomic or specialist, but it's quite easy when you do it right. It's all technique. So the same technique that important in sport is important in warehouse workers or welders, that kind of thing. It's an interesting story is we had the cat on the posture here, and we were doing some testing with lifting a tire with this young man. And I said, okay, great. Now that you've done it wrong, you've done it kind of the wrong way. Now do it the right way. And he looked at me and goes, what's the right way? Wait, you've been doing this for 8 years. What's the right way? Yeah. And so the thing was, okay, so what we took the cat and we put it on his, back of his suspenders in the back like this. And we captured a leaned over position, which was the dangerous position. And again, to be clear, it's not dangerous once or twice. It's dangerous after, I want to say weeks.
300,
Well,
400.
yes, 400.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it's the triple, quadruple digits that are concerning.
Right, right. And oddly, this young man had had surgery before, right? And he goes, I never knew how to lift it. And all we did is we put it on the back and we captured the
Wow.
wrong thing and it said, lift this tire without making it beep. So just keep it quiet, lift the tire. And the ecological dynamics nerds are gonna be like, oh man, that's awesome. That was a constraint. And you can see him drop his hips, hug the tire close to him, and stand up. It was beautiful. I mean, I won't go so far as to say I get chills thinking about it, but that is neuroplasticity. That's what that is.
So the cueing, which you call targeting in the app, is vibration and audio cueing to the participant and a practitioner implying it. So like the other cool thing that I thought about in reviewing your history is you spent over 7 years in the University of Colorado's medical campus as a faculty, clinical, and research
Mm-hmm.
teacher, basically, to an instructor, basically teaching it as a director to these students. So how did that academic foundation impact the commercial product itself? Because you gave a really
Ah,
good example
interesting.
right now,
Interesting.
but I think it's a broader perspective. I think people need to grasp that a little.
Right, right. So, slight edit there. I taught mostly at University of Nebraska, where I got my doctorate. That's where I did a lot of my teaching. My faculty position at CU Anschutz had the word instructor in it, but it wasn't a formal instruction
Okay,
position.
thanks for
Yeah,
correcting that.
yeah, yeah. And be like, people would call me and ask me a question and be like, "You taught? You don't know what you're talking about." Anyway, but what I did get to do is do real-time research with folks with Huntington's and Parkinson's and stroke and some other movement disorders in the clinic during the clinic where we do a quick assessment with some other wearables and get sway data and stuff like that. So all of those experiences and gait walking. I don't know if your audience is familiar with Parkinson's, but there's a shuffle step and a freeze step.
Yeah.
And so,
So
yeah,
I think
okay.
I think people need to grasp that um, movement disorders impact um, their ability to replicate what we consider normal movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that puts them at risk for falls, but also helps
Correct.
us identify potentially who might need more medication, who might need more physical therapy or training.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
they might have good days, bad days. PD is
Exactly.
definitely something that I've done a lot of work with in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Movement disorders are definitely something that I think are good to identify here. So I think if people want to understand that, I definitely feel like if you go, and I'm going to plug your website here at panthertech.net, you'll see some applications on how that could be applied to uh,
Mm-hmm.
for that specifically.
Mm-hmm. One
Uh,
of the I'll give a shout out to Quality Living Incorporated, is a neuro rehab center in Omaha. And actually the director of research there was one of my instructors when I was getting my doctorate, Dr. Karen Hux, and she and her research team has been instrumental in helping develop the CAT the way it is now. And they've been doing some clinical cases and beta tests and whatnot. Um, the most exciting thing is to see some of their patients, because they have an in-house facility where someone who's in a really traumatic, call it accident or situation, lives there for weeks and months to learn how to walk again and eat and talk and all those things. And this one gentleman, when we first were testing the gait training, he had one cat on each foot. And he had to try to take an even step with the left and the right, the left and the right. And one of the first, I get chills telling the story. One of the first times he did it, it's like, go send the motor command until you hear the beep, 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 beep. And it seems so simple, but when the cortical motor spinal pathways are damaged, that's the rebuilding you have to do after you have whatever injury you had. So that was really rewarding. I don't know. I know you didn't ask me about that, but
so,
I just
so
threw
for the
that.
data geeks, that's sensory-motor feedback loop. Um,
Yes.
that's exactly what it is. What you just mentioned.
Uh-huh.
It's happening neurologically, and the cool thing is that this vibes and beeps when you program it with those targets. So it's
Mhm.
really cool when you see it, and that's a really awesome story. You referenced like motor control as a strategy, and really, can you talk about that dynamic system theory in your research?
Mhm.
So, like, it sounds like it's quite theoretical, but you've translated this to really practical training. So, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I can. The traditional model of just coaching is that, Marcelo, I want you to shoot a basketball and I want you to have your hand vertical. And if it's out here, I'm going to correct you here. And if it's in here, I'm going to correct you and give you a very precise, let's call it a very small slice of what I want you to do. And everything that I coach you to do is going to be repeat this. And not that there's not value in it, but there's not very many sports that are exactly the same every time. Golf occasionally, but the ball's different, the weather's different, right? The humidity, all this stuff. So the traditional model is, it's more of an explicit. This is what it was when I was learning: is, hey, if you want to do something and get good at it, you got to do that exact same thing a gazillion times. And now we know that that's not the case anymore. We know a lot more about motor learning. The ecological dynamic theory, or approach, let's call it an approach, is that you don't instruct the athlete exactly what to do. You give them a task by manipulating the variables around that task, like lift the tire and don't let the thing beep, right? And the safe skill emerges. It makes a much more creative, flexible, adaptable, injury resistant athlete, because they have a wide bandwidth of motor behaviors and not just every time I get the ball, I'm going to go right here and that's the only thing I know how to do, right? Another way to describe it is, if you want to go to the store and get some ice cream, if you always go the same way, you'll get pretty good at always going the same way. But then there's a detour or an accident construction. And I'm like, well, how do I get there now? So we use the term neuropathways, but they're really just pathways to a behavior, right? So the haptic cues, which is the feedback, right? to me, they bypass the language processor, like I was saying, and they cue the body as to where it is in space, but not to do just this one thing, to make you more aware of your whole sensory motor control of your space. So it's not like we're only teaching you have to do it this one way in the rest of your life. Is that you have better control over all of your movements if you're continually updating where your body is in time and space.
I think that's gold, what you just said. I hope everyone understands it.
Oh, tell me what
This,
I said.
you
Tell me again.
framed that, hey, you got to do 10,000 reps this specific way to get the great outcome. And you're like, well, that's partially true. There's a better way actually of you just have to have this framework, but you could get there in many different ways. You
That's
just need
exactly right.
to drill that, or you just need to work that method, and that's really gold for professional sport teams or university teams. So like what
Actually, any you remember that song Head, Shoulders, Knees and Toes when you were a kid?
yes.
Head,
Yep.
shoulder, knees and toes. Okay, it's the same sort of thing where you're actively, especially if you cross the midline, because that's a big development thing. But head, shoulders, knees and toes, you're sort of learning where your body is in time and space, and it's the, adult version of that with beeps and vibrations to recalibrate the brain's model of the body. That's all it is. It's not magic. It's just borrowing a neuroscience process, the mechanism of motor learning, and accelerating it with artificial beeps and vibrations that go through the same pathways, sensory motor pathways, that normal motor learning occurs.
So you gave a basketball example. What are some others working with some of the other sport teams and the other universities? What are some kind of results that you've seen there applying that
Mm.
model?
Yeah, we were at I won't say which NBA team, but we visited a couple NBA teams. And this particular one wanted to picture sideways shuffling, just shuffling sideways. Can't really do it like that. Um, and when you change direction, if you don't initiate your movement from your lower half, meaning your hips down, your top tends to tip over, and then you have to kind of catch yourself and slingshot yourself back. That's not an efficient way of movement, as you may or may not know, but I forget what the word is. But if you want to change direction quickly, the eccentric and concentric contraction of your foot and then a change of direction, the least amount of time you can spend in that contact point, I don't want to say makes you faster, but is a measure of the speed, right? So if you tip over at the waist, you're going to have to decelerate, catch yourself, and then recenter and then push off again. So what we put on the cats, we put it here and we captured a neutral position. So a neutral position. So the constraint was, hey, don't make it beep. As long as you stay neutral or beep. And so the guy naturally lowered his hips and kind of, I don't want to say slid, but you can tell he slid across the floor in a smooth, controlled manner so that he wouldn't tip over when he got to change directions. And so I had him in front of me. And so here's me, here's him. And I would do this, and he would have to follow me without making it beep. And that's one kind of example of changing the task to let the skill emerge. That's one easy example.
Yeah, and I think flipping back to the industrial side of things, you gave that example of that individual that had to flex over, change that tire,
Mm-hmm.
which I think applies to warehouse employees or a massive population that
Mm-hmm.
is constantly tested for you know, are they fit to work or fit for duty? This is something that now is more about cueing them as they're working. And that's where I think the
Mm-hmm.
potential market is to be
Mm-hmm.
able to mitigate the cost of someone getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's a market that, on the that I've done POA testing on, that I've done wearable device assessment on, looking at their heart rate, looking at their heart rate variability,
Right,
looking
right.
at looking at truck drivers, and looking at what health adaptations one initiates when they're looking at stuff like this. What's the fascination that you know um, what are some things that from I know you've been working with NASA and as well as some commercial space ventures. What are some other initiatives that you think that this could fit in? Because I think
Well,
that's cool.
thank you for the props. We actually did not get the NASA grant, but I was working with them. It was great to just interact with those folks as they help you kind of prepare the grant. But so I don't want to be out there and be like, hey, she works for NASA. No, not yet. But if you're listening, we are going to submit another proposal. Um, so yes, so adaptation is one of my favorite words. I have a confession. I have a tattoo that says neuroplasticity on myself because it's just so, it's like a superpower. It really is. Same
It,
thing. You don't know how to do something, you do some things that you have complete control over, and then you do know how to do it. Like it's magic, right? So I forgot the question now already because you said adaptation. I remember. So um I think this conversation wouldn't be complete unless we talk about long-term adaptation of either industrial athletes or other athletes. But there's plenty of really, really talented people, either in the warehouse or welding or the crafts or sport, that have really crappy biomechanics. And what I mean by bad biomechanics is that it's not the most efficient way to use their body in terms of physics and gravity and leverage. So, uh, there's one thing that humans have in common is we're all bound by the same laws of gravity. Now, your arm may be longer than mine, and you may be stronger than me, or you have a different build. But there's generally an accepted core principle, let's say for the kinetic chain, right, where it starts from the ground up, and there's an acceleration and then a maximum acceleration of something on the periphery, for golf or hitting or baseball or swinging a hammer, whatever, and then some deceleration that you need to have, right? And so there's plenty of people that swing a hammer wrong or throw a football wrong, but the body is so magical at adapting that you can do those things at the not the best way for a little while. But tissue, let me see how I can put it. Um, the body is not, it's not a machine, right? So something's going to break down if you do it more times than it's worth, than it can. So tissue mechanics is a big thing. I'm not an expert in that at all, but obviously bones break, things wear down, joints, cartilage wears down. So the idea of having an optimal technique is that you have a wide bandwidth, so you don't have the recipe of getting a repetitive injury, but doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does because it's talking about movement efficiency, right? You can apply that to runners, you can apply it to cyclists or swimmers.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I feel like I have a couple of coaching friends that are in the triathlete side of sports,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're always cueing, doing movement analysis, gait analysis, and
Mm-hmm.
looking at how can I make this athlete more efficient. Not only that it
Mm-hmm.
improves their timing, but to your point, like reduces injury in the knees or in the back or in the hip. And
Mm-hmm.
then, going back to the industrial athlete, it's like if I can mitigate risk for lower back injuries, knowing that I have a pre-existing population that, 50 plus has worked in the warehouse for so long, they're riddled with injuries. It's not if, it's like when their back goes out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how how can I mitigate that and cue them constantly in being able to say, hey, put this on for this shift and help me. Like it'll cue you like when you get tired. And if you get tired,
Yeah.
and this beeps more than 3 or 4 times, take a break.
Yeah. Do
You
something
know,
else. Right.
yeah, it's
Right.
like, okay, we'll switch you to here where you're doing more inventory and
Right.
then we'll have the other individual swap out. So like work shift management. Aha,
Mm-hmm.
guys, if you're hearing this one, that would be ideal. Um,
Right.
you know,
Right.
uh, I mean, I have a fun time talking to a lot of other business owners as well, and I think it would be really cool to get your perspective on, um, you know, you've obviously secured a patent, which is crucial for protecting your IP, and as
Mm-hmm.
other entrepreneurs that are listening,
Mm-hmm.
you want to develop that they want to develop their own, let's say, technology, or
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give them in that process? Because obviously the advice you gave was, hey honey, is this okay, that I build this? but
Ask
but
your wife.
yeah, exactly. Ask your wife. Make
before you empty
sure.
the
Yeah.
account. That's a fair.
Yeah.
That's probably
Um,
number one. That's awesome.
uh,
That's really funny. So, good point. The advice I would give is if you have funding, um, and it's funny because I mean, any kind of business, I get conflicting, even in the same hour in the same conversation, sometimes by the same person. But um, if legalese is not your wheelhouse, find the money to pay someone that you think would be good. I did it myself. I filed 3 provisional patents before I did this other one, and they were like $500. I'm like, write a patent, whatever. Didn't know what I was doing, and I did it. It wasn't this, but it was like patents are us company. $4.99, and you get what you pay for in that case. And then so all those were rejected, obviously, but this last one came through. But the advice would be, um, read. Okay, here's some real advice. Read other patents first. And don't take this as legal advice, but there's likely something really similar out there. And a patent is 80 pages of explanation and 2 pages of claims. And the claims is the only thing you're protecting. So if I take a pencil and I put it on this wristband and I say, this is my new pencil wristband, I'm going to, be able to write with your wristband. That's not a patentable thing. And so do your research, which is not anything new, but if you find a patent attorney or a patent firm, do your research, talk to other customers who have used them before you decide that I'm going to get a patent. Because it might be you have a great, what did I call it, wristband writer, but nobody cares. And you just spent 40 grand on that and nobody cares.
so the supply and demand equation of economy that needs to be considered before you say, I have this idea and I'm going to go down this
Right,
rabbit hole. You know,
right, right,
and I
right.
think it's really great that we have entrepreneurs out there that are that passionate, um, that are that motivated. But I think that's right there, worth the whole. It, you have to consider it, but most people don't. You have
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
that's because you go down that rabbit hole. You need to understand that if there's a demand for it, and
yeah,
obviously, hopefully every single owner does it. You have a wonderful
right.
phrase. You have this wonderful phrase in your work, learn to learn.
Mm.
Can you unpack that philosophy?
I can, and I need to give credit to Gabriella Wolf, one of the wonderful, very influential to me. I've never met her, but I've read everything that she's written. Um, and that phrase, like I said, I wish I could take it, but it's not that you learn how to do something, you train your body how to adapt. So the learning to learn is how do I adapt? And in my humble opinion, I have call it an approach. I call it the trifecta of learning. And I'm going to just use the example of motor learning here. One is um, how it felt, whatever I did, how did it feel? What did I do and how did it feel? Right, there's that. Um, the next one is what happened. And most of the time, we have those two things. You shoot a basketball and it misses, and you have how it felt, what you think you did, and then what the ball did. Right, and then you do it again and you make it. And you're like, well, it's different. I don't know. Um, what's missing in the learning to learn is learning to now, and this is part where the cat comes in, is that what you actually did could be different than what you think you did. And if you're trying to change your behavior based on that outcome on two things that don't match, that's like trying to navigate with a map that's upside down. Or and you can do it right now if you have a computer mouse that's separate, flip it upside down and try to work. So what right? So without having a map, to an accurate map of your body in space and time as you're doing the three things, what I think I did, how it felt, what I actually did, and what happened, there's no recipe to make adjustments. And that's why I'm not anti-visual, but looking at video at a later time is great to understand after the fact. But if you want to have an opportunity, or an affordance is what they call it in ecological dynamics, to make the change right then, that's what makes you a quicker learner and learning to learn.
Yeah, the degrees of freedom. That's a
Mm-hmm.
term from movement that I learned.
Bernstein.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
those degrees of freedom, obviously as we get more distal or more complex, and you really can't see them until you're looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, like, I have a daughter that dances, so the complexity of dance is
Oh,
definitely
right.
something that I think people need to grasp, because
Yeah.
you're moving out from your center and out, and it's those degrees of freedom become harder and harder. And the only thing you could do is you need to visually see it. And when you visually see it, it's really appealing if it's done correctly. And if it's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
obvious,
Mm-hmm.
so it's, cueing is something that you can verbally say to someone, and they could see it in a mirror, and they could see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and like she just did this over the summer, where she did a program that was done by Juilliard. There was no mirrors in the room,
Yep. Yep. That's how I would do it.
and she got exponentially not only better, but like she was like, I can't see myself, Dad. And I'm like, well, you got to be able to feel,
Feel. Uh-huh.
and that is a whole that opens up a whole other side of motor learning. And that's really what I feel like we've just kind of unpacked in this last half hour of
Yep.
movement. So, like,
Mhm.
looking ahead, where do you see technology going in the next 5, 10 years with
Oh,
this
golly.
concept?
Uh, well, we've got about a 5-year pipeline of things that we're developing. And so one thing about, well, I'll give you a little hint. One thing about the cat is that there's no knowledge in it. So it's not, you're going to grab it off the shelf and say, there's going to be some golf knowledge in here and I'm going to put it on. It's going to teach me how to play golf. It doesn't do that. It's the only self-referencing device that you set your own zero. So it's all personal, customized to you. So what that means is the other ingredient that's missing is the knowledge of, well, what should I do? And that's why our main customers are coaches and movement educators and therapists and ergonomic specialists and those type people, right? So it doesn't have any knowledge in it that you just impart, right? The technology, part of the reason I said that is because there's no knowledge
Can I
in it.
stop you right there? Can you explain a
Yeah.
little bit more? Because I think that's where I think people need to grasp. So
Ah,
the
okay.
coach and the coach will use that device with
Mm-hmm.
the app and then place it on the athlete,
What?
patient, worker,
Mm-hmm.
and that professional knows what they want from that outcome and will
Correct.
identify those movements by using
Correct.
the app to target, and this will vibe and auditory beep to them what
Yes.
if they are within that target that you've identified
That
for.
range, right. Excellent point. The way to think of it is when you have it, if you're a movement educator and you have an urge to use a verbal cue, sometimes it's toward a movement, other times it's towards a body part. Like, um, you want me to be aware of my shoulder so that I either do something with it or don't do something with it. Let's say don't shrug the shoulder, right? And so you verbally direct your cue, say, hey, drop your shoulder. Drop is the word of drop. Invariably, when I do something again, it comes up again because that's what the body does, right? So the way to think about uh, it not having knowledge in it is that you put it on the shoulder and you might record the undesirable movement of lifting the shoulder. And so it acts as a cue as if you start, oh, I forgot, beep, beep, beep. Oh, I'm not supposed to do that. Beep, beep, beep. Um, I forgot what I was saying, Marcelo.
You're talking about cueing the individual
Yes.
moving.
So there's no knowledge in it. So the same knowledge that comes to your top to the end of your mouth when you say, hey, drop your shoulder, that's what you impart. You do the same thing. You can even use the same words, drop your shoulder, but you
and,
capture that and
and
you
that's what's
teach.
there now, right?
Yes.
So what's the pipeline before I
Oh,
interrupted
got it.
you?
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Right, right, right. So because it's agnostic, there's no database of norms. There's no database of gait, biomechanics, and all that. It only knows what you teach it. So in our patent, we actually have you could capture a certain brain wave and reward it with vibrations, a certain force production, like a force transducer, reward that with vibrations. You could potentially have a force plate, when you're hitting a baseball or softball or glove. There's an optimal weight transfer that occurs, and you can't describe it. It's like describing what salt tastes like, right? But when you feel it, you could say, that's the one, that's the capture I want. And then you can run, this, it doesn't take
I
the place
prefer
of,
to taste honey than salt, but go ahead.
okay, well, that's true. Um, So it doesn't replace all the data collection that really smart people use to figure out what's the best way for this person to move, or let's say the optimal way. But what this does is it captures it without any numbers. Just say, do it again until you get the beep, and that's the movement that we want you to do, or that's the sensation of weight trend. So you're like almost like time stamping your own experience
It
as you're
it does
practicing.
give you some movement and degrees of motion, XYZ, as the individuals look. So the practitioner could
Yeah.
see that in the
Right.
app, but
Right.
it's not yet. So like from a again pipeline standpoint, your goal is to be able then to be able to capture that and do other things in the next 3 to 5 years. That's your goal, right? To be able
Correct. That
to,
is
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eye movement, force transduction, muscle activation, and that's a big thing in rehab, right? The body naturally compensates for an injured part, and so the other
Yeah.
muscles step up, right? And then when it's time, like that muscle could be healed or that tissue could be healed, but it hasn't been worked in 3 months because you've been protecting it. And so
Yeah.
that kind of muscle activation techniques, which is getting a lot more popular now, especially due to the less expensive technology. But that's something else that we're doing too, where it's in the plan.
Yeah, I think that's the drive home message too, is also in the past, solutions like this were very costly, were very restricted to room environments that were like in a university setting or in a clinical setting where it was in a
Mhm.
big room and you couldn't really, like it was very costly to operate. Now I think that's the one big significant change that I've seen is that now it's available to a lot of other individuals.
Mm.
So, that's one thing really I think people need to be able to understand and grasp.
Yeah, yeah, it's affordable. Affordable motion training is a good way to put it. Yeah.
So, for me, I think it's been like, first of all, it's been absolutely fascinating to really dive into this. And your work's remarkable. You've really been able to, on the intersection of like neuroscience technology and human performance, you've really, I think it's a true unique application because it's in process.
Hmm.
It's not post processing, right?
Right.
So that's something that I've historically have always been able to, uh, have had experience with
Hmm.
taking a look at heart rate data, taking a look at um, distance or velocity
Hmm.
achieved in a
Hmm.
practice or in a game, and looking at that human performance post processing. So this is really unique and being done actively now. So I really want to thank you for one, doing this and then sharing your insight with us today. So I really want to thank you to our listeners. I hope
Hmm.
you've enjoyed this episode.
I loved it.
Um, I think, if you want to have more information, I'll include the links to the website itself, to the sensor itself. I think it's definitely the future of human performance and technology. Until next time, we'll keep exploring this frontier of technology. I really want to thank you again, Dr. Joe, for joining us.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
oh no, this was phenomenal.
I could
This
go
was
on for hours.
yeah, no,
Forgot. Yeah.
I definitely feel like we definitely need to, maybe do a follow up to this that looks at um, motor cueing in motor movement, maybe in a framework from complexity to stability, and how we can
Okay.
challenge that, and maybe give that framework not only where it can apply to a clinician, but to a student. I mean, I wish I had
Hmm.
this in my kinesiology classes
Yeah.
so we can just talk about complexity and stability because that's how you scale movement, even from a
Yeah.
movement practitioner, right? How do I
Uh-huh.
get an athlete to a power clean from a squat?
Mm-hmm.
And what are those cues? It's
Yeah.
like here's something that we can teach them about posture. We can teach them about, triple flexion, triple extension. It's
Right.
those are concepts that I feel like, yeah, we could alone have
Yeah.
a long conversation about.
Well, I would learn more listening to you talk about that stuff. Remember, I'm a brain, my little slice is motor skill acquisition. So I would learn more from you
It,
probably than you from me.
it goes hand in hand. It goes hand in hand. You can't separate motor
Right.
learning from human movement. So,
That's fair. That's
uh,
fair. That is
yeah,
fair.
but I
So
appreciate that. Thank you so much.
awesome. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me. What a pleasure. Happy to come back.
yes, we'll do.
Okay, sounds good.